Well, thanks for coming to my photo show. It's not going to be a typical presentation, and I'm slowing down because we got people coming in still. But I'll tell you this story while people are walking. I wanted to be a photographer just like everybody else. I took a photography presentation class, and the instructor said, first you got to buy an expensive leather-bound portfolio case. And I was okay with that because I like spending money. But then after you figure out how to open it, he said you have to practice opening it blindfolded, which was a little weird. But the part that killed me was then you had to set up a table in front of a mirror with your eyes open, watch yourself opening it, so you can make each gesture in the opening process as elegant and commanding as possible. He says, the opening of your portfolio case, make it a ceremony. And never, never just toss on the table a pile of prints. So as you can guess, for my presentation, I just tossed on the table a pile of prints, but I made it a ceremony. And I named my website pileofprints.com. Now, I like special artistic photographs just as much as more than anyone else probably. But I don't think they're so special that they're entitled to just lounge behind the glass of a picture frame and not do anything. I know other people think that art doesn't do anything. It's like the British royal family, expensive and useless. But it didn't used to be that way. Many of the pictures that we have in our museums now, the photographs were once the contents, of our weekly news magazines, Life and Look, and paintings entombed in museums were once, the centerpieces, the altarpieces of cathedrals, the center of a community. So we're going to look at how art can get back. Art can be a fusion of community, strongly held beliefs, and creativity, and not just the latter, as it seems to be so much now. So for a long time, I don't do it anymore, but for a long time, I presented my pictures like as if they were children lying in a pile of leaves, not because I didn't like them, but because I expected them to get up and do some work someday. And so what we're going to see first is some of the piles I made, the ceremonial piles. And I'll be just pointing out mostly the ones that we're going to dig into and I'm going to show you how I got those pictures to work. The first pile we're going to see is taken with a film camera. Everything else will be digital. These old still lifes like Edward Weston in Los Angeles. And I burned all these cameras, sold all these cameras I came to Portland. And I took pictures only in the streets with your anarchists for Portland Union. We're going to go to Berlin first. My first night in the city outside of America. These are things that I shot on their own. You can go see them on pileofprints.com if you want to. We won't be talking about them tonight. Oh, our secret war on the plain of jars. That's an interesting photo. And I think the best one, which we're not looking at, is how in Mexico they see the dead differently than they do in the US. We're going to Istanbul after Berlin. And after that would be in India. And this is a color pile I made. It will be color, I promise, after a grueling year in Calcutta, in black and white. And I just printed my book, 25 cents a cup. And I really made 100 photos to work in that book, illustrated. And we'll be talking a little bit about that. And then Lily and I went to Italy just a year ago, last November. And that was my last photograph of the ceilings in Venice. And we returned to Portland for the conclusion. Now we're starting in Berlin. It's 2006, 5 years after 9/11. It seems like science fiction now, but the president, George W. Bush, he failed to protect us from the worst terrorism attack in American history. Stole the election, I think, but lied us into a war but you're not allowed to talk about it on TV. It seems like science fiction because now the last president has been indicted, 91 times? And he's in court every other week. So you have to talk about the criminality of Republicans. But in 2006, you weren't allowed to do it. And I was in Berlin, and that's why I'm talking about it. That's why I'm making the show they should have on TV and didn't. So in this film, I'm just really illustrating my thoughts, my first night outside of America.
Berlin's Reichstag, the meeting place of the German parliament. My thoughts and photographs of it from the spring of 2006. It was gutted by arson in 1933, not restored until 1999. Some people say that Hitler had his Nazis tortured, but there's no proof. As with 9/11, what isn't in doubt is that the destruction gave an ambitious politician the opportunity to seize unprecedented power. I violated Godwin's law before I even got off the elevator. Godwin's rule of Nazi analogies, that internet tradition that in any argument, whoever makes the first reference to Hitler loses the argument. But it was my first night in a city outside of America. I exited that elevator into architect Norman Foster's extraordinary Reichstag makeover. Yeah, I got a little spaced. Everywhere I pointed my camera, there were amazing images of beauty. And when beauty is that easy, it's not hard to see how superficial it is, unless it stands for something. In the new Reichstag, the Parliament meets beneath a transparent dome and a circular display of the building's history. The transparency and the history trying to suggest that nothing in this government is hidden from view. There is one photo of the Nazi legislators. How I wish it were just the Nazis, that we Americans were encouraged to use as the villains in any movie, but to keep out of every analogy. On American television, it's just not acceptable at all to make any reference to the extremism, let alone the criminality, of Republicans. Imagine, beneath our Capitol's rotunda, a display on the presidential selection of 2000 that explained how George Bush's brother, Jeb, the governor of Florida, had his state spend $4 million to find clever ways to throw qualified African Americans off the voter rolls. And next to that, an explanation of why it's not just fine to trick a nation into war, but criminal to lie about a blowjob. And finally, a note about the $16 billion in war contracts that Halliburton, Dick Cheney's company before he became George Bush's vice president, has won in just 2 years. Outside of America, for the first time, I'm worried about the future of a country in which a lot of people don't realize that if the crime you commit is big enough, the government and the media, they just cover it up. They don't investigate. Looking out from inside the Reichstag dome, I could see the Brandenburg Gate, but not, of course, although it stood right here, the long-ago demolished Berlin Wall. To the right of the Brandenburg Gate is the construction site for the new U.S. Embassy. And in the darkness to the right of a pridefully placed embassy, you see Berlin's new Holocaust Memorial. I stopped here before I toured the Reichstag. The first words in the museum's display read, "It happened, therefore it can happen again." But due to the honesty with which the German people have faced their past, I'm not so worried. that it will happen in Germany.
Okay, it's 2008 now. We're in Istanbul. I don't know, does anybody remember 2008? Obama was running for president. We were optimistic, and we would not know what was coming until we woke up with Trump 8 years later. Most of you were sleeping in the USA. I was sleeping in Istanbul. And I don't know if you've been, how many people have been to Istanbul? Oh boy, lots of them. Well, what we're going to see, all the photographs taken here were taken in Sultanahmet between the Grand Bazaar and the Spice Bazaar. Now, if you've been there, they're both tourist traps. The Grand Bazaar, skip it, you know, nothing but tourists. And the Spice Bazaar, they sell spices in one corner of the bazaar. Everything else for tourists. But in between the two, sloping down the huge hill of Sultanahmet, there's this Islamic shopping district, probably the oldest one in our civilization. Because, you know, the Hagia Sophia is just a couple blocks away. And this is, you know, the holy city of Byzantium. And then the Ottoman Turks took it over, the Ottomans took it over, became the Ottoman Empire. Anyway, that's the best place in Istanbul to buy headscarves. It's no tourists, it's just real authentic shopping district. So if you make sure you see it if you go back again. So when you're teaching English in Istanbul, all your students look exactly like they would look in America, except the Islamic fundamentalist women, who have to wear headscarves, of course, and raincoats. Now, if it's raining, you know, a raincoat is a great thing, but they have to wear these raincoats all summer long. It's 90 to 100 degrees and humid in Istanbul from the morning when they leave their house till they return. Raincoats. You don't get to take them off in the restaurant. Nothing. And, you know, for a teacher from America, they're the only thing different in your classroom. So they're the most charming part of your classroom. But they're not the students that are asking you out for drinks after work. And those students are the secular students who are terrified of the headscarves, who believe that there's more headscarves every month because they're paying them to wear them. And, you know, you're drinking with your students and they're saying they're going to close all the bars, you know, because some Muslim cleric has said that he wants to close the bars. And, you know, there's nothing more arrogant than an English teacher in a country that doesn't knows nothing about. So I'm sitting there saying, they're not going to close the bars, you know. There's too many of them. And I just want to tell you about one of my students, Bahar, who wrote the music for the slideshow you're going to see next. And that moment when she looks at you and says, you don't even know George Washington. We had our George Washington Ataturk. We had it as a medieval caliphate after World War I. The Sultan had a harem and women had nothing. And our George Washington Ataturk, he gave us a democracy. He gave us the women the vote, same time your women got the vote. And he gave us separation of church and state. Everything you have, we have only because of our George Washington. And now Erdogan, who's the ruler of Turkey, what he has done is made an Islamic party so that all the, you know, this country's 95% Islamic. So all the clerics are telling everybody, you got to vote for the Islamic Party. And he's basically gamed the system where he can't lose an election. And he's privatizing the whole country. The whole coastline is being privatized, and the money gets poured into these the coffers of Islamic fundamentalist businessmen who surround Erdogan. And the students are afraid, you know, that they're going to wake up one day in Iran. And this slideshow is about what they woke up to one day. But I just want to point out, you know, if you're an Islamic businessman, this is wonderful that Erdogan is passing all this business to you. But it's not so great if you're the wife of an Islamic businessman, because you got to wear raincoats, or he's not getting the money. All summer long, to every business, you got to wear a boring, dumpy raincoat. You know, women elsewhere in the world are making themselves uncomfortable to look special. You gotta make yourself miserable to look as dumpy as possible. So what would happen in a society like that? Well, one afternoon, is anybody here an Islamic or a Turkish fashion historian? Well, good. Because, whether this was cause and effect is something else. But one afternoon, or morning, over the entire city, these giant billboards suddenly appeared. They were like 50 feet high. I have some photographs of them where I'd say they were 1,000 feet high. And everyone was on this company, Armenier, I don't know how to pronounce it. But there were women in raincoats, of course, but styled by Vogue magazine, if you can imagine. They copied that style. And the Vogue style is very cool and classical. It really worked. Because these weren't your mother's raincoats. They were sexy raincoats. And you're looking at them and you can't even tell at first. You go, wait a minute, is that a sexy raincoat? And then you see another one, wait a minute, she's strutting her stuff. And it was just like, I don't know if they paid off the clerics or what, but it was an extraordinary moment in the city, and you'll see that. I was taking the giant billboard you see at the beginning, taking a picture of it, and this Turkish worker came by and said, Armenia, she is beauty. They had bewitched the entire city. And as far as my students were concerned, it was like the Weimar Republic in raincoats. They were like, it was like some Islamic, some sort of big brother styled by Vogue. But whatever it was an extraordinary moment. So we're going to see fashion in a Turkish bazaar. And you will see the conflict between Western and Islamic fashion, between mothers and daughters. Okay, it's 2019. We're in Calcutta in April, and April is the hottest month in Calcutta. I'd been in India several times by then, by 2019, and I decided I would, instead of these little projects you see, and I'd do a big project, I'd write a book. I'd have the travel adventure of a lifetime. And I'd spent, a year studying India, studying Indian history. So I'd be ready to write this book. And I get there the first week in India, I can't lift my backpack up to the top bunk on the trains, on the sleepers. And, anyone else would have immediately Googled, sudden memory loss, sudden loss of muscle strength, but not me. I was having the travel adventure of a lifetime, not a medical adventure. And so I just buried it and went on with the trip. I didn't worry about or think about ALS or anything until I got back. I wrote it up. I was more honest about what was really happening to my body. But basically, I stuck with the conclusion I had, in India was that, well, I'm getting old, and I realized that most of you haven't gotten there yet, but you will, and so maybe you'll be able to relate to the book at that point.
More than 250 years ago, the first multinational corporation, the British East India Company, encountered an ancient civilization and squeezed them for everything they had. Here, leaves are being burned where those Brits were buried, at Calcutta's Park Street Cemetery. As Calcutta was the headquarters for the East India Company, it quickly grew from a company town into a corporate metropolis. Although here it looks like the corporate world hasn't touched it, this is where that enterprise first arrived. When the British moved their capital to New Delhi in 1911, Calcutta was left behind, and it seems to have remained in India's early 1900s. Nothing in modern India recalls its colonial past, like seeing thin, barefoot rickshaw pullers hauling plump and sandaled choppers. If India doesn't make you a vegetarian, nothing will. It's not so easy to find the unmarked tari bars, where porters and rickshaw pullers hang out. Here they just keep washing out, refilling with a zesty 2% alcohol moonshine liquor, and resealing with candle wax the same used beer bottles. In 2019, I was in Calcutta all year volunteering with 3 NGOs whose clinics and schools help the inhabitants of the city's 5,000 slums. I was coming to terms with my privilege as well as my portfolio. With 100 exquisite photos, 25 cents a cup, Finding Paris in India is a beautifully illustrated travel memoir available now from Amazon and Apple Books.
Okay, so there's 2 copies in the library, or there will be this coming week. I'm really excited about this next part because I saw Ron's wonderful talk on London and Paris last time, and I got kind of jealous because these are all pre-recorded, and there wasn't that spontaneity and talking to the audience, and so but I like the music, and you'll see this in this presentation. You'll see some transitions that I think really work well. So I wanted to have my cake and eat it too, is what I did basically. I set this up with the music. And I just decided I would just tell you that, if one of the stories I tell takes too long, I'm just going to hit the space bar. There will be no explosions, and the music will stop. And then I'll finish the story, and then I'll press the space bar and it'll continue. Because what I'm doing is stealing stories from my book. And, it's not a script. I've tried to estimate how long they would take, but I'm not very good at that. So let's begin. Our first city of art is Venice. As I said, Lily and I were here there just a year ago, in the Ferrari Chapel, where you can see masterworks by three great Renaissance artists, Bellini, Donatello, and Titian, not in a museum, but in the setting for which they were created. This is Titian's vision of Mary's ascension, bodily ascension into heaven. And you can see how the golden light from the stained glass on either side matches the golden light of heaven behind her. And here as we get in, you see how Titian has painted this vision of the actual movements of Mary's body and her, fusing it with her fervent, noble soul to create one of the enduring images in the Renaissance that not only inspired the people in the church, but other artists who developed the images for years until our civilization changed so much that it didn't work. And guys like Picasso had to smash up those forms. And that was great. I got nothing against Picasso. But 100 years later, they're still smashing it up and thinking it's something new and different. And that I got a problem with. Lily and I also went to the Venice Biennale, which is the most prestigious and oldest exhibition of contemporary art in the world. And that's the German pavilion on the right, where they have gone beyond scattering rubble on the gallery floor. They've dug up the foundation and written a manifesto about deconstruction. I mean, seriously, that is new. My opinion is, why can't we start building? Why can't we start believing again? Why do we have to keep smashing things up? And so this is the chapter from my book, City of Art. And in this chapter, there's different adventures. I guess I'm going to stop here in this picture a second. So this is the rooftop of the Hotel Modern Lodge. In India, a really decrepit hotel, $3 to $5 a night. And then there are the legendary $1.50 a night rooms, which I've never dared to take. But what's unusual about this place, you can see there's old folks in the background and young folks dancing. It is possibly the last surviving stop on the old hippie trail that once stretched from London to Bangkok. In the book, there's quite a few adventures, but we're only going on one, the big one, Durga Puja, the biggest festival in Calcutta. Durga Puja is 4.5 million Hindu Calcuttans, 4 nights, 2,000 temporary buildings that they build and then destroy. And they can look like anything, a toy box, a ship at sea, and the entire city, it changes to party time. The subway opens at 2 p.m., closes at 4 a.m. This one is based on an alternative wicker-based civilization or something. I don't know. The guy in the center doesn't understand it any better than I do. But I'm going to concentrate on talking about the panels I did understand, the ones that really communicated deeply held beliefs to me. But before we do that, we're going to step back and talk about what Durga Puja is. Durga Puja is really it was for hundreds of years, just like Thanksgiving, an extended family-based celebration. And Durga was like, as one Bengali told me, our most successful daughter coming back with her children to visit those who love her best. And so Durga was just, she had slayed a demon, in the myth, in the history that saved her community. But the extraordinary thing that happened in 1910, the Bengali activists told everybody that this year Durga is the Indian national spirit and the demon is the English. And so they made it in the streets. They made it in the face, in the streets, all-night party for the first time. And Brits move the capital to New Delhi the next year. But the guy you saw in the last photo was carrying buckets of water back to his bamboo studio, like you see here, because he doesn't have running water. And here you see many-armed Durga in the background, and the demon in the foreground on the right. But what's important to remember about this, since 1910, you can do anything you want within reason with Durga. We're going to see things that are far beyond what I think you think they would get away with. So Durga can express anything you want to express. And this is the pottery village of Kurmatoli, where most of the idols that are inside each of the pandals are built. And these families have been doing this for hundreds of years. Most of them are sort of mass-produced by hand. So they look similar, but not the same. But some of them are just like a classical work of great sculptures, as this sculpture of Gandhi. So when you're in Kurmatoli, it's like being in the villages that must have arisen around the Gothic cathedrals where the sculptures were living. And and it just feels like you're back in time. Like here, I see this picture. I always think about ancient Egypt. They're hauling the things out by hand. And here they're taking the idol back to their neighborhood pandal, great honor. And this guy is painting the pandal the night before Durga Puja begins. And a priest invoking the goddess, because this is a religious festival, and the goddess Durga is in each one of these pandals. And I gotta stop this for a second. I'll tell you about Raj. Raj was a con man that I met in the House of the Dying. And he checked himself out of the House of the Dying just before Durga Puja, because there was a lot of money to be made invoking the goddess into all those pandals. Now, Raj wasn't a priest, but that didn't matter any more than it didn't matter that he was perfectly healthy when he checked himself into the House of the Dying for a vacation. What we're going to see now is that the next panel is the neighborhood panel for the pottery village. And so they have artists will come and talk to neighborhoods sometimes and say, this is the design for a panel, and get away with building these extraordinary visions. This is the inside of the previous panel. Now the next panel, I want to set up the blockbuster panels, which we're going to concentrate on. India just successfully landed a lunar probe on the moon, but they had done one just before this 2019 that had failed. And this is an extraordinary panel. You're waiting in the rain for hours to get in here, and then I was lucky the rain cleared just before we hoped to get there. And so there's like a huge line of people, and they have to funnel into the rocket ship you see at the bottom there. And it's wonderful because spaceship travel is supposed to be dangerous, right? And festival travel is definitely dangerous. There's stampedes every year. So you don't know if you're going to make it. But you hike in there and you turn sharply left to go into that globe. And it works only because there's thousands of people all around you. And suddenly you're like inside that globe, and it's a 360 view of night on another world. Imagine thousands of people, the poor, the rich, everybody in town is walking for free into this, and they're being transported to another world. And thousands of people are screaming with delight as soon as they walk from the narrow rocket into that big room. And it's like it's a pandal without moving parts. It's transferring 100,000 people a day to another world. It's really extraordinary. And then you get out of the pandal, and you're an alien looking Durga just waves goodbye, and you go back down to the crumbling palaces of Blacktown. This is an abstract art panel. And while we look at these panels, I want to set up the next one. I love this is hot red colors on the outside, cool blue on the inside. So in 2019, the Reuters Foundation declared India the most dangerous country in the world for women, with like Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, and Yemen behind it, because there were horrific acts of violence against women. And this is an extraordinary panel. This is my favorite panel, the Empowering Woman panel. And as I described it in the book, it's like, imagine a battleship-sized panel wearing a hot red dress with black and gold accessories. These women were just, in the face of that violence, they were just not backing down at all. There's pounding music, and each one of these outstanding women, one of them is the first Indian astronaut, female astronaut. Another is the Governor General of Bengal, and heroes in the arts and in spirituality. And there's vertical lines in the portraits because each one has two portraits. As you walk past it, there's an angled portrait you start to see. So each face slowly turns into a picture of Durga. So they get the message that Durga is a strong modern woman. And here we're going to see for the first time one of the idols coming up. The idol in this panel. You can barely see it in the background, but you can't make it out. But I got a close-up. It's right on the left side. And here, the first thing you notice, there's no demon. They didn't want to kill. They didn't want any killing in the woman's panel. She's got 6 hands on the staff to do whatever needs to be done, and 4 hands are still available. In most panels, as you saw it in the bamboo studio, Durga Puja's arms there's like a peacock's feather. They just spray out. So that was a really powerful message in that panel. And the next one is just as strong. So I've got this architectural panel in between to cool off. The next panel is for the transgender, which in India are often referred to as the Hijra. They have their own fraternity outside, sort of on the outskirts of Indian society. And you can say this woman is she's being mentored. She's like she's learning to be a full Hijra. She's just having a moment there with making eye contact with a young girl in the train. But anyway, what they do is they clap their hands really loudly and then they take donations. And it doesn't look like begging, This is the temple for the transgender. Notice this angel is falling inside a cage because she's cast out of the society whose prejudices imprison her. This is the idol, the most radical idol I've ever seen. That Durga has aspects of Christianness to show fluidity of gender. But look at her foot. It's tickling the demon, not killing it. And the demon is smitten, not slain. This is an encounter that looks like it's going to end in bed. Nothing like this city of art could exist in America, because organized religion would not tolerate this level of creative religious expression. And organized art would never stand this close to the masses. So Durga Puja shows us that another world is still possible. After the puja, the idols are all ceremoniously dropped in the river, right by the side of Calcutta. Because that river, the Hooghly River, is a distributary of the Ganges. So the gods can just swim right up the river to their home in the Himalayas. And because Calcutta is now concerned about environmental principles, the idols are then lifted out of the river and dumped in the landfill, as you can see here. Now, I have a question for you. I hope you weren't looking and you get a clue from that screen. What wears an orange camouflage suit and can leap 32 feet? Anyone know? A tiger. Tigers are incredible animals. I mean, the tiger is like science fiction. 4-inch retractable claws, motion detectors built into the back of their eyeballs, and that orange camouflage suit. I mean, anybody else is a dark green, light green sage camouflage suit, right? Only tigers hide in orange and black stripes. Now, they need to eat 1 man-sized body a week. Well, of course, they'd like to eat a lot more. And when this story begins, there were 100,000 of these serial killers stalking the subcontinent. So when a king in Kerala, 200 years ago, asked his people to dress up like tigers and dance in the streets, they were all in. I mean, they've been doing it for 200 years now, because tigers were their gods and their demons. So we're actually gonna see, I'm very proud to say, backstage, the team that won the 2015 Thrisser Kerala Tiger Dance Competition. We're gonna see them preparing from 2 a.m. to 2 p.m. because this is the monsoon season. And they use oil paint that no amount of water can remove. And so you know how long oil paint takes to dry? So they gotta paint one coat starting at 2 a.m. and then wait for it to dry and another coat. And then they start dancing at about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, dance till 9 p.m., come back and take the turpentine off it, take the paint off the turpentine at 10. Okay, we're back in the USA now. You know, you can imagine, I get back so full of India that I'm positively annoying. I will say, you know, Durga Puja, 2,000 buildings, no building codes. You can never do anything like that in America. And then I'll hear this voice saying, obviously you've never been to Burning Man. Or in more of a down mood, I say, there's so much suffering in Calcutta, people sleeping in the streets everywhere. Obviously, you've never been to Portland. So, you know, I did say that there could be nothing like this art in America. And I was really talking about the, you just don't want to do to Jesus what they do to Durga. But it wouldn't end well. However, there is, you know, great art of the community with community involvement and passion and belief in this country. And we're going to look at we're going to look at a festival that I would put up against in Portland here, against anything in India, for creativity, but also for community involvement. And you know one aspect of this festival, it's called, and you know about the naked bike ride. But the naked bike ride is one of it. How many people have been on the naked bike ride here? All right. I'm not alone. Because, you know, you'll see photographs of the naked bike ride. You just do not photograph the naked bike ride with clothes on, or you're just a creep, you know. So anyway, I have participated. But we're going to see, you know, the other 100 examples of the other 199 rides, other than the naked bike ride. But it requires some explanation here, because you see this, you're just going to see people having fun, And you're gonna say, oh, that's nice. People are, what does that got to do with art? Well, we're not living in the Renaissance anymore. We said, remember Mary with the entering the kingdom of heaven? Well, people aren't asking themselves, am I going to heaven or am I damned? This is a consumer society. People are asking themselves, am I having fun or am I missing out? That's what life is like here. And we saw those Turkish billboards, and they were so successful because they looked at what women want. Women want to have fun. Women want to be special. We can sell it to them. So we're talking about bicycle activists in Portland who said, bike riding is more fun than driving cars and shooting guns. But if we can show people that, we can save lives and save the planet. So that was it about, and that's what I had fun when I wrote the essay for this. It's based on a photo essay that I wrote in 2014. And I wrote things like, in 1984, me in the book, it was a movie, 1984. In 1984, he who controls the past controls the future. But we live in a consumer society. The past has no point unless it can be remade as entertainment. So in our world, he who controls the fun controls the future. To change the future, change the fun. Okay, well that's our presentation. I hope you saw that we do have, art can be a community and belief-based again as it was in the Renaissance if we just have to want it. Thank you very much. Are there any questions? We have a microphone if people have questions. Somebody? No questions. Okay, well, thank you. Thank you so much.